extreme natural fluctuations are indicating that climate is changing right now. Every day, Earth's temperature is increasing at a higher rate, and it is estimated that global climate crisis could displace around 1.2 billion human beings by 2050. Isn't it alarming? So, today's ongoing pandemic is coupled with this significant issue of climate change. On this note, I'd like to pass it on to our first presenter of the evening, Swanandi, to start with the session. Thank you. Swanandi, are you there? Guys, I guess there is some technical issue on Swanandi's side, so please wait for a couple of minutes. If you have any queries, please post them on the chat box. Ashima Sharma, I guess you're presenting to everybody.
So, hello everyone. Yes, Swanandi there with us.
Hi. So yeah, I was experiencing some network issues, but I'm sure Dipshika has given a nice introduction. Yeah. So can we start with the presentation now? Am I audible, like clearly? Wonderful. So we all know what is climate change. Essentially, we've heard about it in a lot of places. But what is not told to us is how climate change is affecting us, humans. And why is that? Maybe because we are the ones that are affecting the climate change, that are causing the climate change. But in the humans also have a same issue of climate change because we are an integral part of the system. And that's so in the slides, I will show you how the human health is affected by climate change. I will also tell you how India has been affected by climate change. Now, when you step out of your balcony and you sniff some nice air, do you feel well? Perhaps you feel very fresh, but are you sure? Are you really well or are you really ill? You wouldn't realize the issues of climate change quite about now because the health concerns related to climate change are an accumulating threat and you'll see them in the long term. How climate change affects us on a community level is decided by a number of adaptive capacity factors. Now, what are these factors? Adaptive capacity factors are those factors that will tell you how a human or any other system is adjusting to climate change. It will also tell us how to moderate the potential damage or how we tend to cope with the consequence. An example of an adaptive capacity factor is the natural and the built environment, like the state of your infrastructure. Or maybe it could be the governance and the management. Like, do you have or do you not have health protective surveillance programs? But this is on a community level. On an individual level, how is health affected by climate change? Well, it would be affected in essentially two
Hello.
ways. Yeah.
Hello.
Am I audible? Kaden, am I audible?
Uh, yes, you are audible.
Okay. Yeah. So we've seen on community level what are the factors that are affecting human health. But on an individual level, you would see how climate change is affecting you. One is that it will change the severity and the frequency of your health problems. So you would be iller for long and you would fall ill more often. Secondly, you would also be faced by a lot of unknown illnesses. Like we are seeing an excellent example right now. So this is one of the factors that human health has been affected by. And these factors exactly are an enduring battle. We don't know what we are battling with. So in the next slide, I have shown a couple of factors, a couple of illnesses that we go through on a daily basis. We know them, they're very common. And I've tried to establish a link between them. We know asthma is a very common illness that affects millions of people worldwide.
Miss, you're not audible.
Hello guys, there is some technical issue from her side, so please wait for.
Guys, Swanandi will be back in some time. She is facing some internet issues on her end. Kindly do adjust for a minute or two.
Hello. Did you guys lose me by any chance?
Yes, Swanadi, now you're audible. Hello.
Yeah, you may continue.
Swanadi, can you hear us?
तुम्ही आपला नेट बंद करा. Hello.
Yes,
I,
Swanadi.
Yeah, we can hear
yeah.
you.
So can you tell me where did you lose me?
I guess you can continue with
Please start over again.
Okay. I'll start all over again. So
Yeah, from your first slide because we have lost the continuity. Thank you.
okay. So you want me to start from the first slide itself? Oh,
Yes,
wonderful.
yes,
Okay.
yes. Thanks so much.
Okay, Deepshika, can you go back, please?
yeah.
Okay. So what I was essentially trying to say is that we have seen the health effects of of climate change in humans, and we feel that, hey, I am not really ill. I'm doing pretty well. But these health effects will come on a long-term basis. They will accumulate over time. And what governs these health effects are on a community level are something called as the adaptive capacity factors. So the adaptive capacity factors are these factors that influence the ability of humans or any other system for that matter to adjust to climate change. They'll also tell you whether you can moderate the potential damages or how will you cope with the consequence. An example of this factor is, let's say, a governance and management system. Whether you have or you do not have health protective surveillance program will determine whether you can go ahead with your climate change mitigation or not. So this is on a community level. On an individual level, there are two ways in which health actually is affected. One is that your severity and the frequency of your health will change. So you will be ill for longer and you will be ill more often. Another issue is that you are going to be faced with a lot of unknown entities. We can see an excellent example right now that we are going through. It's an unknown health threat. So in the next slide, I have jotted down some known health threats, and that could have a potential change, a potential connection to climate change. So the first one we can see is asthma. Asthma is known to be caused by air pollution. There is an increase in ground level ozone, and this ground level ozone or ozone in general is a very reactive species. So chemical species. So when there is an increase in the ground level ozone, it enters your airway and it reacts and it becomes very inflamed. The airway becomes inflamed and this gives rise to lung tissue damage. Asthma is a type of chronic obstructive pulmonary disorder. Now, this is a very fancy word. So let me break it down to you. Chronic is anything that affects you for a long period of time. An obstructive pulmonary disorder is anything that is going to block your airflow and make it very difficult to breathe. So what causes these COPDs? There is something called as a particulate matter in the air. Now, particulate matter in the air is of primarily two types. One is the PM10 and the PM2.5. PM10, or rather PM stands for the particulate matter, and 10 and 2.5 tell you the size of these particles, which are measured in microns. Now, your human hair is around 75 microns. So you can only imagine how really small these particles are going to be. What happens in your respiratory system is that there are ways in which PM5, 2.5, and PM10 can be very easily filtered. But due to industrial processes, there are particles that decreased in their size. We have particles up to 1 microns, and human lungs are not evolved to filter these. Also, due to climate change, what happens is that these particles tend to remain in the air for long, or probably react with other aspects of climate change, like other factors in the air, and then create further issues. So that is why we have seen an increase in chronic obstructive pulmonary diseases due to climate change. Allergies. Well, allergies are a very common phenomena. A lot of us have very different sort of allergies. Here I'll be talking mostly about pollen allergies and probably dust allergies. We know someone or the other who has pollen allergies and cannot absolutely enjoy a spring vacation. But why are these allergies becoming more frequent? One reason is that due to warmer temperatures and change in the climate cycle, the flowers are tending to bloom earlier. They're also releasing more pollen in the air, and this is giving rise to an increasing allergic symptoms. So people who did not have allergies or do not have known allergies right now can also show symptoms for a shorter period of time. Another issue is that when there is a change in wind patterns, these allergens and the allergen producing plants tend to shift to newer areas. So people in an area might be resistant to these allergens, but when they go to a new place, the other population is more susceptible. Apart from our respiratory system, there are other places where climate change is also affecting us. For example, vector-borne diseases. These vector-borne diseases are diseases that are transmitted to humans through an intermediate organism. So for example, if we take malaria, malaria is caused by mosquitoes. So your vector is the mosquito. The malaria is not affected by the mosquito. It does not affect the mosquito, but it affects you. Now, how do you know that these vector-borne diseases are due to climate change? There's a simple logic if you see. Warmer temperatures enhance the favorability for the breeding of the vectors. When you have warmer temperatures, when you have water, stagnant water, it increases the breeding grounds for these vectors. And secondly, you must have realized that your pathogens that affect the human body are favorable and they grow really well in the ambient temperature of 37 degrees, which is your body temperature. So it goes without saying that at some point in time when your ambient temperature reaches to about 35 or 37 degrees, these these pathogens can grow and multiply more favorably inside the vector. So these are the two factors that, due to climate change, will accelerate the vector-borne diseases. We also have diabetes. Now, the direct link between diabetes and climate change is not very well established, but there is a hypothesis that says that we have a type of brown fat or a brown adipose tissue beneath our skin. Now, that is used to burn fat and give us heat, which is very useful in colder temperatures. But in warmer climate, what happens is that brown fat gets less activated, and the climate, in that sense, what happens would be that the change in this activation can lead to some sort of insulin resistance, and that leads to diabetes. Now, this idea is not very well researched, but people are still looking into it. That is all about how different factors can affect human health on an individual level. But what about for the country of India? Now, imagine the country of India as a map. You have four main geographical zones. The biogeographical zones are segregated based on what is common, geographically common in them. So if you visualize the map, you would realize that the Himalayas on the north, the Western Ghats in the south, are tall barriers, and so are the coasts. So these barriers, the Himalayas will stop the Tibetan cold air coming through, the Western Ghats will do the same for the sea air. So all these borders, the boundaries, are the most susceptible to climate change because they're protecting and bordering the central plate of India. Now, there are some factors that impact us. In the main is the impact of heat. You must have seen, like, if you switch off your ACs, if you switch off your fans right now, you will feel extremely hot. And if the session was in May, you would probably be melting. So this is the impact of heat. Rajasthan, Madhya Pradesh, Uttar Pradesh, and Maharashtra are the worst hit areas in India. For every year, a number of heat waves have increased. Also, the temperature during the day has increased, and not just that, the temperature during the night has also increased. In 2019, just last year, although it doesn't feel like last year, but yeah, just last year, a result of hot temperatures and hot waves, around 184 people died in the state of Bihar. And that's just in the state of Bihar. Can you imagine how many people would have died due to heat waves in all over India? There is an impact of disasters. Now, as I mentioned earlier, coastal regions and even our islands, Andaman, Nicobar, and the Lakshadweeps, are more vulnerable to tsunamis and cyclones. There's a research that tells that these rise in sea levels and climate change is increased the intensity of tsunamis. So the effect of what a smaller tsunami will give you right now will be much more accelerated and aggregated at some point in time in the future. So smaller tsunamis in the future will have the same adverse effects as big tsunamis have right now. During the time of, let's say, early 1900s to 2015, meteorological data has shown that there was a threefold rise in the widespread of extreme rainfall. Those rainfall that caused flash floods. This was in the belt of Mumbai to Bhubaneswar. This increase also causes a fluctuation in the westerly winds, and that causes some sort of warming and moisture gathering in the Arabian Sea. I'm sure you all remember the Mumbai floods of 26 July, 26, and I mean, nobody can forget those. But if you know this phenomena, this factor was the aftermath of the same phenomena. There is an impact of the sea level rise. We have seen how the Indonesian capital is going to go underwater, and potentially every other coastal city is also in a mortal danger of being submerged. But I'm going to stress on another indirect factor that affects the rise, that has been affected due to rise in sea level. One of these factors is the man-animal conflict in Sundarbans. If you wonder that these tigers are just nabbing people because they want to, no, it's not true. What is happening there is that due to a rise in sea level, the land is going underwater, and there is a reduction in hunting grounds. So there is not a reduction in prey, but the tigers don't have an area to hunt. And this is what is giving rise to the man-animal conflict there, because humans tend to be an easier prey. Similar conflict situations are seen in areas with saltwater crocodiles, because due to a rise in sea level, there is also a change in wave pattern due to coastal development, and there is also a change in ocean temperatures, the gradient of the temperature throughout the area. So these crocodiles are coming towards the coast, and this is also giving a rise in negative interaction between humans and the animals. Now, we have seen these basic impacts, but what is India doing for climate change? There is a Prime Minister's National Action Plan or Plan for Climate Change. It has identified some above mentioned health issues, and it has also given us some facilities and strategies to mitigate and detect these issues. Some of these are GIS mapping of access routes to health facilities in an area that is prone to climate disasters. Then there is a development in high resolution health impact models for a state. You have provision of enhanced public health services. There is a providing high resolution weather and climate data to areas that have been affected by particular diseases. We also have something that tells you the ecological study of air pollutants and pollens, especially those that trigger asthma and other respiratory diseases, and how they are affected by climate change. So these are a lot of ways in which India is looking into the issue of climate change. But these are the direct effects of climate change on health. But there are some direct effects which will be told by Gavin in the next presentation, and he will highlight the connection between climate change and water scarcity.
Absolutely true, Swadhini. Human health is a basic, obvious aspect that is going to be affected due to climate change. And that reminds me of another basic resource that surely affect us, and that is water resources. So climate change is surely going to affect the water resources. Time and again, various pressure groups as well as international organizations like IFPR and IPCC have raised an alarm about the dangers of climate change on water resources, as well as on those that are dependent on it. Today, the boon of using water is no more a reality, as many international bodies have warned of water security problems, which have already begun to take place and take effect on our lives. So, my dear participants, what do you think is this water crisis? Can you guess? Like you can say that suddenly you get up one fine morning and you see that there's no water in the tap, nowhere around, and you'll feel it's a situation of panic and helplessness. So it's a really frightening, the problem of water crisis that we see that is due to climate change. So the combined effects of growing population, rising incomes, and expanding cities will see demand for water rising exponentially. And you'll see that now how does large cities, as India is a rural state, which is fast and speedily urbanizing. So we can also see that many corporate bodies and business lobbies firms tend to ignore the issue of climate change due to their own economic interests. However, as I want to mention that we all humans are in the same boat called Earth, and it's we, and if that boat will start sinking, we all are going to be affected, not A person or B person. We all are going to be affected with that. Maybe the corporate economic giants may not be much affected as of now, but surely the poor and the vulnerable will be worst victims of climate change. Water crisis will impact lives of those dependent on it. You take agriculture, food industry, as well as sports institution. Many of you must be knowing that how a few years ago IPL was moved out of Maharashtra due to the severe drought condition, as well as even today, there is a danger of water crisis on Mumbai itself. We can see that many studies have shown that in few years there will be severe crisis hitting the city and around. Also, we can take the small cities like of Bihar, Assam. You can see how the situation is. We also see during monsoons, coastal states like as well as Assam, Bihar get floods. We also need to see that we also need to see the government and governance aspect, the systematic aspect of this issue, because not just climate change, the administration too is responsible for this. As you say, we can't clap with one hand. There are two hands. So one is climate change as well as it is our responsibility. So city like Mumbai, if you see that they have a stormwater drainage system that dates back during the colonial times, and it has not been effectively upgraded to the current capacity requirement of the city. So why are we talking all this, like, about this climate change? You can see it, for example, recently Corona virus has been affecting everyone. May not be direct on us, but the workers, the housemaids, those who are daily helping people, the milk fellow guys and other guys who help us in our day-to-day life. Due to some or the other problem, we are getting affected. So is, my dear friend, the climate change, the climate crisis issue will surely affect us all. We see that not just it affects small cities and big cities, but poor and the rich alike. We further go to the melting of the Greenland ice. That was is a issue in the environmental circles, and there's a concern that the rising sea levels due to melting of ice. The assessment comes from an international team that polar scientists who reviewed all the satellite observations over a 26-year period. This threatens to put many millions more people, especially the vulnerable, at low-lying areas, coastal cities like Mumbai, Kolkata, and Dhaka, at serious risk of flooding. So you can see that maybe the rich are not much affected, or those who can afford to have a backup, but those who live near the sea or the low-lying areas, you can see their life gets destroyed, and it's a big deal for them. So what can we do to save our earth? What do you think, guys, that we can do to save our earth, not for just for our future, but for the future of the coming generation? The future of the coming generation depends on it. So apart from taking small steps like at our own home, like saving water, prevent actions that contribute to climate change, we can also join platforms like NGOs and organizations. Now, why do we need this platform? Because the government won't listen. Maybe a single person cannot directly speak to the government, or the government may not notice. But if we all come together and raise our voice through the platforms like NGO organizations, then the government will surely listen to us, and they have the power to implement what to avoid climate change, the rules and regulations. Just as the story of bundle sticks, you must have heard that together we don't break. So it's the same thing can apply over here too. So we as humans have a responsibility, not just for ourselves as humans, but for other creatures like animals and other parts of the biodiversity, on which more information will be shared with you by our friend Ronak, will give us more insight on the biodiversity aspects of this. So I'll hand over, Ron.
Hi, I hope I'm audible to everyone. So, as mentioned by my colleague Gavin, I will be taking over as to how climate change has an effect on biodiversity. And as I will show you now, there are three types of creatures, or there are three creatures that are affected by climate change now. It's not many years from now or anything like that. It's happening at this very second. So the first bird we see here is known as the cheer pheasant. Now, this is a bird that primarily lives in Jammu, Kashmir, and the Ladakh area. And this bird is currently vulnerable. It has been rated vulnerable by the IUCN. And this is mainly due to habitat loss. And their population has been on a steady decline because farmers have had to move their crops further up mountains because the lower hills are getting too hot for their crops. And as the farmers move up, the birds have less space to live. Hence, a reduction in habitat and the loss of population. The second bird that we see here is the Adelie penguin, which is a rather cute penguin, and its population has dropped by 90% in the last 20 years, which is a huge amount. The biggest reason for this is, as with the cheer pheasant, the warming climate, because these penguins primarily live on glaciers, and glaciers are, of course, made of ice, which means that as the climate warms, the amount of glaciers available for these penguins to live on decreases. And as that decreases, the amount of penguins also decreases. At the same time, the amount of prey for these penguins is also going down because as the earth heats up, the oceans are also heating up, and sea creatures tend to be very sensitive to temperature changes, which is why their prey has been decreasing in population, and so that has been causing a decline in the penguin population. And for the final creature, we have what is called the bramble K melames, which is a type of rodent, and it is found primarily on an island off the coast of Australia. This animal is now extinct. It was declared extinct in 2016, and it is known as the first animal to have ever gone extinct mainly because of human induced climate change. Because in the course of the last 2, 3 decades, rising sea levels have caused this little rat's island to decrease by 97%. Imagine if 97% of your home went underwater, because that's exactly what happened to them. And that's why they don't exist anymore. But of course, these are not the only creatures. But of course, these are not the only creatures on Earth. There is also one other creature that is very important to this planet and has a big influence on what happens to this planet. And that is, of course, humans themselves. As you can see, over 300,000 lives have been lost every year, primarily due to climate change. And this is only for developing countries. This does not take into account more economically developed countries. And along with that loss of life, there's $125 billion in economic losses. When making this presentation, I wanted to write it in rupees instead of dollars, but when I converted it to rupees, the number was just so large and so it was just I couldn't write it down on the presentation because I thought it looked quite difficult to understand because it is just that big of a number. And moving on, we will talk about how the economy is also affected by climate change right now and the socio-economic consequences of climate change. So, what a lot of people seem to understand is that to have a pro-environmental policy, to be green as a government, there will always be damage to the economy. That, oh, if we want to become green, costs are going to go up and the economy is not going to do well. But that is actually wrong. It is very clear that the economy and the environment are very, very interlinked with each other. And when one goes down, the other goes down as well. And since the environment is on the decline, very expectedly, the economy is also on decline, as we will see now with some very, very scary numbers. So, if you think you are rich, you should probably think again. because it is expected that by 2040, the increase in costs associated with extreme weather events will reach $100 billion. $100 billion is a number that is a little difficult to understand, really. So, for some comparison, $100 billion is the GDP of Kenya, and it exceeds the GDP of Sri Lanka, Oman, and Luxembourg. The amount of costs associated with extreme events is bigger than the worth of some countries. And just because the cost is expected to increase by 2040 doesn't mean that we aren't seeing the consequences now. For example, as you can see, very recently in the month of August, two hurricanes simultaneously made landfall in the Gulf of Mexico, which is something that has never happened in recorded history. At the same time, if you have been keeping up with the news, you might have noticed the increased flooding events that are seen in Assam and Bihar. And if you kept track of it, in Kerala, both in 2019 and 2018, Kerala was battered with some intense and fatal flooding events. And for any Mumbaikars here, I'm sure we all remember the alert we received regarding Cyclone Nisarg that was going to approach us, and we weathered it. So, as you can see, extreme weather events are becoming more and more common. As someone once said a long time ago, a once in a lifetime event is now becoming a once a decade, a once a year event. And that's not normal. But don't take it from me. Take it from businesses themselves that have predicted that costs will go past $1 trillion. A $1 trillion increase in costs primarily due to climate change. And just for reference, $1 trillion is exceeds the GDP of Sweden. And if increased business costs were a country of their own, they would be the 17th richest country. And now to see why these increase in costs are going to disproportionately affect less economically developed countries. The first reason is economic loss. Countries like India, various countries in Southeast Asia, Africa, and Latin America tend to be dependent on agriculture and water resources for their economy. This is in comparison to slightly wealthier countries like the European Union, the United States, Australia. These are countries that are more dependent on manufacturing and services. And by their very nature, they are more protected from the weather because manufacturing plants are usually in big steel and concrete buildings, whereas agriculture and farmland is just there in the open. A heavy flood can wipe out a farm, but it will do little to no damage to a manufacturing plant, which is why agriculture based economies are more at risk, and this is usually less economically developed countries. The second reason why less economically developed countries tend to be more affected by climate change is their environment. Because if you see, they tend to be in hotter environments near the equator. And what this, as my colleague Swanati touched upon, this is something known as limited adaptive capacity, which refers to the ability of a country to adapt to climate change. Sorry about that. Am I audible now?
Yeah, you're audible, Rana.
Okay. As I was mentioning, I was explaining the concept of limited adaptive capacity. Okay. I was explaining the concept of limited adaptive capacity, which refers to the ability of a country to adapt to climate change. If you think about it, a colder country like France, if it warms up due to climate change, can always look towards warmer countries like Spain or Morocco to see what it can do to adapt. But a hot country like India, which is already warm to begin with, if it gets even hotter, it doesn't have any other country to look towards. Technologies have not been developed yet to adapt for this kind of heat. Hence, India is going to have to develop its own technology, which is expensive and time consuming and requires infrastructure. Which brings me to my third point. poorer countries also tend to have limited its infrastructure. It's poor, and this is for two main reasons. One is that less economically developed countries tend to have limited access to newer technologies, mainly because they cannot pay for it. They are unable to pay for it due to a lack of funds. And the second reason why this happens to be the case is that they lack the ability or the political will to organize resources. Just take a look at the countries in sub-Saharan Africa, where due to broken governments or countries that are currently undergoing civil war, there is simply not enough resources to divert and to switch towards renewable sources of energy. But this is about countries, and sorry about that. The biggest place where we regarding the food and the availability of crops. Extreme weather, as I mentioned earlier, is on the rise. And when that happens, crop yields go down. When crop yields go down, supply goes down. And when supply goes down, prices go up. I'm sure we all remember the time when onion prices had skyrocketed because of droughts in Maharashtra. This is a very clear example of what could happen if we do not stop climate change now. The increase in prices will, of course, disproportionately affect lower and middle income families that simply cannot afford this kind of food anymore. For an example, I'm sure that there are people in the audience that love coffee. You know, we drink coffee in the morning to wake us up. It smells really nice. It gives us energy to work from home. Coffee is a plant that is very sensitive to climate change and can only operate within a very specific set of temperatures. Hence, with the increasing global temperatures, it is likely that coffee production will decrease by 50%. That will decimate the coffee industry. It is in fact predicted that by this year, by 2020, farmers will find coffee to be it'll be a loss-making plant, and farmers will no longer be able to sustainably grow coffee anymore. A world without coffee, imagine that. But it's not just coffee that's at risk. Even essential crops like rice, wheat, barley, these are all at risk. So then the question arises, what can we do about it? You know, this entire presentation has been very grim, and we've talked a lot about what are the things that are going to happen. But then the question is, what can we do about it now? So for that, we have two different types of solutions that we can undertake as responsible citizens. The first type of solution that we can do is known as the individual solution, which is something that we can do right now, something that we can do right after this presentation ends. The moment we are done with this presentation, you can close your computer, you can get up and you can start doing it. Something like volunteering for an NGO, or even something as simple as planting a tree, which is something that some of us are taught in school as well. This is something that we can do by our own will. But at the same time, it is also important to recognize the collective and the power that groups of people have. For example, fossil fuels are one of the biggest causes of global warming, and they account for a large percentage of fossil fuel of greenhouse gas emissions. To reduce this, we require a shift towards renewable sources of energy. However, this is not something that you and I, as the common man, can undertake very easily. We need the government and we need large private institutions to shift towards renewable sources of energy. Hence, we need to use our power as a group. We need to make our voice heard in order for these institutions to listen to us. And to elaborate more about what all solutions we could do, I would like to pass the presentation on to my colleague, Michelle.
Thank you, Ronak. I hope I'm audible enough.
Yes, Michelle, you're audible.
All right. So, good evening, everyone. I'll be talking about solutions we as individuals and society can do on a daily basis. Starting with green, your commute, we were very happy to learn and to know about the fact that since the lockdown started, there was a decrease in pollution. Mumbai was breathing cleaner air, um, all of those sorts. But since the lockdown was eased from 1st June, there was a 60% rise in pollution due to Mumbai traffic, just in Mumbai, making it India's largest first city to have a rise in pollution. Uh, Here are some few things we can take into consideration, like public transport, share the car, public, walk wherever possible. But this is only possible in a post-COVID and a free-COVID world. But taking into consideration all these points, we'll be helping the environment on a very large scale. We also have to make sure that when we're buying a new vehicle, be it a car or a scooty, anything, we should make sure about the model, how efficient it is, the fuel efficiency, everything. Fly less wherever possible. Further on, we'll see how we can use energy wisely and we can save money as well. So yeah, these are all the basic things we can do. Unplug computers. When you're not using it, switch off the lights. There is something very important we have to do, and that is while we go for electronic shopping, we need to make sure that we check out for Energy Star labels, which help us save energy. There are also these new policies that companies have come with, that you can give them if you're going to buy new electronics or home appliances. You can give your old ones to them, and they give you the new ones in a discounted price. So if you do all these things, you are helping towards the environment in ways that you don't know about, because we'll be reducing e-waste and all of those sort. There are these new stalls that have come up. I have seen this on a metro station. So what they do is they take your old phones and they see how it is working, and what the value is, and they give you the cash back. So instead of just discarding your electronics, as we keep on grading it, so instead of just discarding and throwing it away, we can take all of these things into consideration. Installing a smart thermostat. So what a smart thermostat does, it learns your daily routines and adjusts to your home temperature for peak efficiency. It also saves money on energy bill and decreases emissions. So if you do this, there will be a reduction in pollution. Next on, we can see how we can get more involved socially and individually. Support or join youth-led movements. So youth-led movements like Indian Youth Climate Network raises voice on global platform, works in regions that has vulnerable climate change and environmental issues. So if we get involved into these, movements and all, we are contributing on a very social and individual level. Also, another point to make sure is that we vote for leaders who are very active in social work towards the environment, spread awareness among our friends and relatives about our diet. So here what is we have to learn about. Research says that by reducing our consumption of animal protein by half, we can cut our diet's carbon footprints by more than 40%. Now, what is carbon footprint? It is the total greenhouse gas. Hello, am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Okay. So it is the total greenhouse gas emissions caused by any living organism. So this is another point we can consider. Buying organic and local whenever possible, reducing food waste. You can separate your dry and wet waste. You can start composting in your own house, grow your own produce. So this is what some urban cities and societies have come up with. They have their own gardens in their society and they grow their own produce. So it is very easy for them to shop while cutting out on travel and packaging expenses, etc. Buying food with less packaging, another point to be taken care of. Why I said that we need to cut our meat consumption is because rearing animals for meat emits methane, the gas methane, which has more global warming potential. So yeah, these are the points that can help us on an individual level to towards the climate change. Small changes can make a big difference. This is all basic things we need to do. This starts from home. So avoid plastic, use biodegradable waste bags, take reusable shopping bags while shopping, buy in bulk whenever possible, reduce food waste and compost again, as I mentioned before. Purchase biodegradable alternatives. So there is an example. There are bamboo toothbrushes. As bamboo is biodegradable, once you're done with it, you can just throw it and it won't affect the environment in any way as much as the plastic ones do. Again, as I said before, reduce your technological upgrades, because the river Ram Ganga has the most e-waste all over India. So everything that we discard from our homes, the electronics, the home appliances, everything has just been dumped in the river banks. Moving on. Now, this is something we youth can get very involved in. Very, very involved in. Because, we are shopping every time. We are literally shopping every time. So what is sustainable shopping and how does it help the environment? Sustainable shopping is something that takes into consideration every detail of the product, from its manufacturing, the material used, to the lifetime of the product, and also how effective and beneficial it is to the consumers and to the environment. It takes into account every possible details of the product and how well it will suit the environment and how well it will suit us. There are a lot of ways we learn how sustainable shopping can be done. First one of it is thrifting. What is thrifting? Thrifting is nothing but purchasing of second-hand based items. It is very gently used. You can say second-hand based items might be, very old or roughly used. No, it is gently used. That means it is as good as new. So it might be clothes, it might be electronics, home appliances, furnitures, etc. Thrifting can also be done for the following ways. I mean, it is pocket friendly, it saves money. It also, majority of the thrifting stores that deal with clothes donate the entire money they have collected to NGOs and other homes. So you are helping yourself, you're helping the environment, and you're helping others around. Brands like Forever 21, H&M, and Urban Outfitters believe in fast fashion. What is fast fashion? Fast fashion is the mass production of clothes. So it is something that, produce clothes rapidly. So hence we have these 50 to 70% sale very often in brands, because they produce clothes on a very large scale, which as we consumers do not know how great the effect on environment is in a negative way. So if we take into consideration all of these points, we'll be helping the environment in a very, very large scale. Next, we will see how thrifting helps us. Thrifting helps us in the following ways. Less clothing in landfill. So this is just America's count that it discards about 10.5 million of tons of clothes per year. This is just America's count. Imagine the entire world. So yeah, and going back to a lifetime's period, say 1950s, it is said that they would invest 20% of their income in buying clothes that would last them longer. And now we are buying clothes four times more than we did before, and at 70% cheaper prices. So imagine imagine the amount of clothes being produced, the waste being generated from the textile industries, the resources being used. 60% of clothes made worldwide are made from synthetic materials like polyester, nylon, which are types of plastic, which requires chemicals since they are synthesized. So all of these things end up in polluting the water bodies and the nearby lands. Less resources used and wasted. About 1800 gallons of water is used to make the pair of jeans you're wearing right now, be it a shirt, be it a skirt, anything. It requires that amount of water. A simple cotton white shirt, it requires 2000 to 2600 liters of water. If we switch to sustainable shopping, we'll be saving a lot of resources as well. The making of these generates greenhouse gases equivalent to driving over 130 kilometers. Driving over 130 kilometers, just to give you a brief knowledge of what 130 kilometers is, it is traveling from Mumbai to Pune, and the greenhouse gases emitted is over that. So that is the amount is that has been emitted in the production of clothes. Less pollution. 20% of pesticide used worldwide is used on cotton plants. Since we have shifted to cotton clothes because of the weather in India, this is the amount of pesticides used worldwide only on cotton plants. So imagine the chemical that contaminates the water bodies, it acidifies the soil. So all of that. Moving on, we'll see what points we have to take into account of sustainable shopping. Sustainable shopping considers the entire supply chain, the entire production, the entire lifetime of the product, which is very, very important for consumers to know. As I said, that if we take into consideration everything that we do will help save the environment. How can we be ethical shoppers? Um, Now that the youth is very involved, in thrifting, and it is yet not a very known fact in India, but we can definitely, make people aware of it by doing the following things. While we go shopping, we could do a quick Google research, and for the brand we are shopping, we could know about the transparency of the brand, how environment friendly it is, how it is helping towards the environment, how the product use, how true they are about it. Are they committed to ethical and sustainable practices? Is the product recyclable? The lifetime of the product? And can we buy in bulk instead of in packets? So, which in turn will save all the packaging expenses, the transportation, etc. So, I'll conclude my point by saying that sustainable shopping is not only helpful to you, it is helpful to the environment, to the people around. It saves you and others a lot of money than estimated. So you can be in fashion and you can be in trend and still save the environment. So with that being said and done, I now pass it on to Dipshika. Thank you.
Hello everyone. I hope I'm audible. So I would like to thank all our presenters for such an amazing session. Someone trying to say something? Hello. Hello, can someone just tell me am I audible or not?
Yeah, Deepshika, you're audible.
Yeah. So I guess we had an amazing session, and this would be a good time to take on the questions for the presenters. If you have more questions, please feel free to add them on the chat box. So the first question that we have is for Swanandi. So someone has asked you, what is the climate change issue in Japan? Why does it get flooded every time? Swanandi, would you
Okay.
that? Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's a very good question. As I mentioned earlier, a lot of these flooding issues occur due to erratic rains, which are an effect of climate change. But what is the case with Japan is that unfortunately it has an added disadvantage. It is that the area of Japan is upon a couple of tectonic plates. The tectonic plates are sort of plates, just earth disks, you can say, which interact with each other. Now the interaction of these tectonic plates give rise to tsunamis, and India luckily has just bifurcated a lot of these tectonic plates, so that is why we don't have many earthquake issues, especially in Mumbai. But in Japan, this happens that it is near a tectonic plate, so you have these tectonic fluctuations that create earthquakes that give rise to tsunamis. And subsequently, due to climate change, these tsunamis are gathering more force, and that is why you have more floods in that area.
Yeah. I guess that was helpful. And the next question is for Ronak. So Anand has asked you, how was climate change affecting the economy? Would you like to answer it, Ronak?
Yeah, I hope I'm audible right now.
Yeah, you're on.
Okay, so it affects the economy in many ways. So, for example, one that I mentioned is a very direct way where extreme weather events add a lot of costs in regarding rebuilding infrastructure and paying for aid support. So, as mentioned, $125 billion a year, which is an economic tax that of course we, the taxpayer, has to pay. And the other way in which we pay for it is in terms of future operational costs that will go up due to certain climate events. I mean, the first one that is very easy to know is that fossil fuels are a limited resource. They do not exist forever. And as time goes on, it becomes more and more and more expensive to find fossil fuels, hence increasing costs as well. So these are just some of the many ways in which you can do it. If wanted, I could send over a few resources by which you could uh, explore more about how the economy is affected.
That's amazing, Ronak. So the next question is from Revati Chaudhary. She has asked, we can buy electric car instead of petrol diesel cars. Isn't it a good idea? I guess Michelle can answer this question since she covered the topic.
Yeah, it is another alternative, you can say, but it is super expensive now in India. The production will require, a lot of amount. They're not efficient over longer distance, and they have infrastructure requirements like charging points. So you will require charging points like everywhere, you know, on the road, some places like petrol pumps, which will take a longer period of time to develop here in India. So yeah, that,
That's very
I
true,
hope
Michelle.
that answers your question.
Yeah. I guess we are done with the questions. Does anyone have any other question?
Miss, I have.
Yeah, please go ahead and ask.
Miss, it is about the electric cars.
Okay.
The electric bikes, the electric cars, and even the electric scooters and cycles are very
Mhm.
cheap in India. But as the Miss said, that it is very hard for the government also for making the petrol pumps. They thought that they can make charging points in the petrol pumps, but the petrolmen refused because they earn a lot of profit by selling petrols. Why will they, for 10 to 20 rupees, they will lose their profit? So this is the problem in India, that we want profit, not the climate.
Yeah. So would anyone want to take this question, guys?
Um, I mean, I can try and elaborate on it because she brought up a really good point in that a
Yeah.
lot of money, like a lot of money right now, is invested in the fossil fuel business, and shifting from it is obviously going to hurt a bit. There is always a cost associated when we transition from one technology to another technology, and most of our power grids are right now built on the fossil fuel economy. So it is understandable that people don't want to shift. They want to keep their current sources of income, which is of course been very reliable. But the reality is that we need to shift, which is why I mentioned about putting pressure on public officials, whether that be with the national government, the state government, your local government, your municipality. When you vote for your MPs, you must get out there and show your voice as well, because some changes, not all, but some changes can only happen with large institutions and by policy changes, which is why spreading awareness is an important aspect. But you did bring up a really good point regarding that.
Thank you for that, Ronak.
Miss, my question was from that on electric cars. If it is expensive, then the rich ones can switch to electric cars as they have a lot of money.
Would anyone want to take that?
Yeah. I mean, yes, we can do it, but it will require, you know, another point of using the energy and, having electricity bills, high electricity bills. It is not, we can't do it. We can do it, but just that it is going to take a lot of time to get involved into this. It is a future. Electric cars is a future.
Yeah. So there is another question from where the climate change started. It's from Anant again.
Okay, I like to address that question. Am I audible?
Yes, Vanandi.
Okay. So that's a very interesting question. If you ask me, climate change would have been told to you for a really long time that humans have caused climate change, and there's an industrialization where the climate change started. But that's not actually true. Climate is not a state. Climate is a dynamic system, so it keeps changing irrespective of whether we have humans or not. And one of the factors, natural factors that cause climate change is the solar radiation from the sun and how your Earth's orbital motions, which are also called as the Milankovitch cycles. If somebody is interested, you could go back and Google them. So these are the things which also factor for climate change. So when the solar radiations fall upon Earth, some of them are irradiated back, some of them are absorbed, some of them are absorbed in the atmosphere itself, some of them are absorbed by the surface. So all these factors, all these intermediate radiations also cause a change in climate. Now, the issue here is not whether the climate is changing or not. The problem we are facing right now is the climate is changing at a pace that it is not supposed to. It's going at a far faster pace. And the issues we have created, like burning of fossil fuels and deforestation and destroying all the other carbon sinks, are the reason why we should really worry about climate change. So the climate is changing is not started. It is a continuous process. It has been there before we were there. It will go on after we were there. But we need to worry because we need to live for an extended period of time on this earth.
I guess that was well addressed by Swanandi.
Miss, I have a doubt.
Yeah, go ahead and ask.
Swanandi Miss said that climate change is happening continuously. I had also attended one more Green Line session of minimalism workshop. In that, Kiran sir said that climate change is happening from 200 years. So, was it a little better place to live before the 200 years? I just wanted to ask.
Yeah, that's very
Well,
true.
climate change is not just as I said, the accelerated climate change is happening for the past 200 years, which is the climate change as we know now, which is caused due to humans. And I'm sure if you see it that way, that probably Earth was a better place to live before, but you also did not have a lot of other amenities that are making a better for a better chance for your survival. So if you look at it, you would actually be in the wild in the past long before that. So if you consider the climate change that has been happening for a really long time, you could say that in the immediate, let's say 250 years ago or 300 years ago, you might be in a better place to live. But if you go back all the way to wherever humans started off, it might not be, because you would not be selected by nature to live by. So it's an ambiguous thing. But yeah, if 300 years ago, without any air pollution, I'm sure everyone would like to live that way.
Actually, I would like to put some clarification on, because since I had said that. So yes, climate is it's a changing thing, but we humans we got the first evidence that climate change is happening because of human activity was in the 1800s, which is 200 years ago. So climate has been always changing, and humans have been affecting climate for a long time. But the first evidence that we got that yes, humans are affecting climate was in the 1800s, which is 200 years ago. So okay, that's it. Thank you.
Yeah, I guess there is one last question. It's again related to green commute. So Vilma Fernandez has asked, is solar powered vehicles an option?
Okay,
Would
so
anyone want?
I can take that. I can take that question. It is a concept that has actually been explored, but there are two things to remember. One is that unless it's in a large amount, solar doesn't really have the energy to power a car, really. And electric cars, like as we mentioned before, electric cars are already not the most efficient over long distances, but solar cars will really not work at all. You can't really even cross maybe 60 kilometers an hour. And at the same time, while solar does sound ambiguous, it is also important to remember that if you have a solar powered car, you can't drive it at night because, of course, there is no sun. So if you're okay with driving in the day, I suppose it's a different story. But also, another thing to remember is that solar panels are made from heavy elements like cadmium. And the mining of these chemicals is an environmental problem of their own. So it is important to remember that by increasing solar panel production, while we do end up shifting to greener sources of energy, the increase in mining has its own environmental damages. So it is a bit of a cost benefit analysis in figuring out if it is actually beneficial to do so. At this point, it doesn't work, but who knows the future? We don't know the future. It could be anything.
I have a question. I put it in the chat. It's regarding the solar panels. Okay, are they renewable after its usage? Hello?
Who would like to take that?
Did my question be heard? Was it heard?
Yeah, you were audible.
Thanks,
Someone
thanks.
would be answering that question. Yeah.
So solar panels can, in the sense that, of course, there will be natural wear and tear that happens with technology generally. But as is with solar energy itself is renewable because it is based on the sun. So, and the sun, of course, is always with us. So it is known as a renewable source of energy. But it is important to remember that solar comes with its own costs, the biggest of which being that solar needs space. If you have seen a solar field, as it is known as, it is just huge areas of land devoted only to solar panels, meaning that nothing else can take place there. You cannot have buildings, you cannot have agriculture, you cannot even have a forest. So that is something important to remember with solar. But the good thing is solar is on the decline in terms of cost. And compared to 5-6 years ago, solar is, to be honest, quite cheap for large scale purposes, which is something that is a good news, I suppose. Yeah.
I agree to that. I know it's very costly to put it up, and nowadays it's becoming a little less to set it up. I'm talking about after its use. Are the panels renewable, or that goes just as junk and as waste? Because I was told that no one has thought about that part yet. So it's only.
Yeah, can I?
Yeah. So as long as we are using it, it's fine. But then after that, we are thinking of the immediate thing. What about the future? That was my question.
So solar panels generally are not a product that we decide to use, and it's not a disposable product. It's a product that we plan to use long term. But sure, when you think about solar panels, when you think about any piece of technology, it's not one whole. It's not made of just one material. For example, like a plastic bag is made of just plastic, something like that, which is not reusable. But when you talk about a solar panel, it's made up of some layers of metal, some layers of glass, and a lot of things that Ronak said that you have to mine. So the thing is, a lot of these materials can be useful. There might be some elements in the solar panel as well that cannot be reused. But yeah, so this question, there's no direct answer that can the whole solar panel be, reused.
Um, I would like to add something more to what Kaden said. So, yeah, the thing is that he rightly said that a few elements of the solar panel can be used, but it's till now there hasn't been any technology which the whole of the panel is recycled. So maximum 10 to 15% of the elements from the panel are recovered. For example, some metals which can be again recycled and reused in other products, but majority of the panel is actually a waste at this moment of time. But then again, life of one panel is around 20 to 30 years if you invest in a good solar panel. So at least that for that long, you can definitely, I would rather say, like, instead of burning coal and using that, it's better to buy a solar panel which has a good life, invest in it, which will run for 20 to 30 years. So that much part will be saved. But yeah, till date there hasn't been any much technology to recycle the whole of panel. Thank you.
I guess we're pretty much done with the questions now. So yeah, I'd like to thank everybody for their active participation and of course the speakers for the amazing session. I'd pass it on to Kaden if he has something to say.
Thank you so much, Dipshika. So before we all leave, I have a few things to say. First of all, I would like to thank all the speakers today. The whole session, as I mentioned earlier, this whole session, from designing of the posters, marketing, conducting the session, as well as like literally from the start to the end, it was made by students and young people who are not working with Greenline, and they've done a really amazing job. So thank you, all of you first. And now a few more important things that I want to tell you. One is, if you want to, so if you're already in touch with Greenline through Green Lead or Green Lifestyle, it's a great thing. And if you want to get in touch, I've put the email ID in the chat. You can copy it and you can email it to us, and you can join any of our campaigns. And lastly, so we would like to take a group photo. So if possible, kindly do switch on your video cameras so we can take a screenshot of it's like a virtual photograph. Okay. Okay.
Kaden Ishna told us earlier we would have kept a comb at hand while the video was off.
So sorry.
No worries, it's okay, thanks.
Can I ask a question, please?
Just a minute. So there's this one person. Okay. Wait, just a minute. Give me a minute. Okay, I think there are. Okay. So one more thing I want to tell you before you guys ask anything. So suppose you haven't registered through the form and we don't have your names, or if you registered on the last moment, can you please write your name and email ID in the chat? So through that we can prepare certificates and send it to you. I think someone else was saying something.
Yes,
Yeah, I wanted
someone
to
just
ask
had
a
a question.
Okay. Yeah, please go ahead.
Is it me?
Yeah, ma'am, please go
Can I
ahead.
go ahead?
Yeah, please
All
do.
right, okay. Thank you very much. My name is Juliet. My question is to the first speaker that talked about factors that affect human health, and then she talked about allergies, she talked about body temperature, change in wind pattern, infections like malaria and diseases and all of that. I wanted to find out from her, is there a way to mitigate against all of these factors? What are the things that you can do to protect yourself? For instance, if you are living with people with allergies, sometimes it's like that. You have maybe friends or family members that are around you that have allergies and all of that. What if you have outbreak in infections or in diseases like malaria pandemic and like we have currently the coronavirus and all of that? How do you prevent yourself? How do you protect yourself rather? Are there things that you can do to mitigate against these causes or these factors that clearly affect? My name is Juliet.
Okay, can I answer that?
Yes, please.
So yeah, that's a very good question. We know for a fact that these diseases do not come from one genre. So you have some diseases that are affected by your vectors, some diseases that are foodborne, some are waterborne. So there are guidelines on WHO's website. There are guidelines on CDC website, which is like World Health Organization and Center for Disease Control, that tell you how to react in situations when you have small epidemics or when you've been affected by these small diseases. On the other hand, one of the best things which we could do is community education, where if you could tell people, oh, please do not let water be stagnant here, that would be a potential way in which you will stop malaria. And apart from this, on an individual level, if you feel you have an allergy, if you're having allergic responses to something, one of the best things to do is consult a doctor. There are tests which can show different types of allergies, and again, there are different types of allergies. So you need to know what exactly is the cause. So the best thing is first to consult your doctor, and the second thing you can do is, of course, look up on these websites, which are credible websites that will tell you how to mitigate and how to stop each of these diseases that you're coming across.
Miss, I have a last doubt.
Yeah, go ahead.
Miss, this is about we should use second-hand products, as Miss told, to wear like clothes and all. For the clothes, Miss said that mostly people use synthetic wear that comes from the Textile Commissioner of India. It mostly produces cotton products, and the factories of it do not cause more pollution because it is not a chemical factory. So we should buy cotton products because they are made with eco-friendly stuff and the factories do not pollute the waters.
Michelle, would you like to answer that?
Yeah. I agree with you. It was just overall over the world, not just in India, that they take care of all these things. It has started now that they are taking care of it. They are making sure that they don't contaminate anything. So, are you understanding that? It was, yes, it was a previous data, but it did happen before, and it is still happening. The change will take time, but it is still happening. They're still continuing with this. A lot of other textile industries are making sure that they don't do it, but a lot of other industries are involved in this as well.
I would also like to add something here, if you don't mind.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, so the question is a very good question, Pranjali. The point is that we believe that yes, cotton is it's a natural fiber, so we should use more cotton clothes. But let's look at the drawback of it. When the cotton is being produced, it takes up a lot of water. So first of all, the water consumption of cotton is very high, and also for the processing part, it takes time. Although it's natural, but then it still takes time, and that's the reason in the present situation. Okay, one more point is that with our erratic monsoons, even if one rain shower will destroy all the cotton crops. So imagine so much of investment of resources, money, time, and water will all go down by just one monsoon. So that is another point. And lastly is, uh, there are other natural options also that, except for cotton. So currently it's been promoted that instead of using synthetic and even cotton, you should go for some other fiber. For example, linen, your hemp, and also your khadi. I know khadi is a little rough to wear, but khadi is a better option as compared to cotton. So there are other options. You can just search more about it. Yes.
Miss, I know this that the cotton doesn't pollute the waters in the factories because my father is a assistant director in the government textile commissionery. So even he takes me to tours with him sometimes to the factory. So I have seen the machines and all that. So they work and I've never seen anything pollutory happening with the cotton stuff. And they even make the other stuff like the synthetic linen. And I have never seen anything polluted.
No, it's not polluting. It's just that when you grow cotton, right, it requires a lot of water. So if I need 1 liter of water to grow some type of crop, cotton might require 10 liters. It's an example. So you see the ratio, the just small amount of cotton production requires a lot of water. So imagine if everyone switches only to cotton clothes, how much of water that to fresh water will be required to grow cotton. And we do have very limited sources of fresh water. So that again is a question. It comes on our water sources, and for people who need water, that again is the point. So yeah, we should always be on a go to see what options are available other than our preferences and try to choose better ones. Yeah.
I guess that was very well answered. Does anyone has something else to add on?
Miss, can the PPT and the recording be shared?
I guess that will be shared later.
Yes, we will share the PPT and the recording with you guys. But can you like just email us first and we'll send it to you. If you have a GSC, you'll get the PPT and the recording.
Can I say something? As usual, Prakriti and team, Prakriti is the only one I know from here. It's nice to put faces to names. And as usual, this team always comes through with wonderful webinars and wonderful topics. Keep up the good work. And hopefully that we are part of this more of your webinars. Thanks.
Sorry, I
so
have
much,
something
ma'am.
else to say.
Yeah.
Can I say something?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you very much. It's still Juliet. I want to say that maybe we should create like a group page so that if subsequently we want to have a webinar, we can just drop that on the page. There are about 44 people remaining here, and I want to believe that more people registered. So we could just, I want to believe that on the form, there was a place for getting people's WhatsApp contacts. Or you could ask everybody now to put in their WhatsApp contact on the chat box so that the administrator can copy that and then create a group page. So that subsequently, when you want to have a webinar, for instance, or a conference or anything, you could just send it to that group page. And then if after now people have questions, they could drop their questions on the group page. That's because we know that being on this platform, Meet, Google Meet, it will consume a lot of data. So a lot of people may just want to keep their questions to themselves for whatever their reasons are, maybe because of logistics or the costs or because of the time, because they have other things they probably wanted to do just immediately after this. So I feel that we could just create a group. Then if people have subsequent questions, they could ask on the group. Then the link to this session can be dropped on the group. Then also the speakers, they can drop their materials, their slides on that same group for everyone to download. So you will not have to send it to every single person one by one via their email addresses. Okay, so that way we can also communicate better with one another. I was just thinking. So I don't know if that goes down well with the organizers or the administrators of this program. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. I would like to address this. So Green Line already has we already have a WhatsApp group. It's by Green Lifestyle Initiative, and the group is called as Sustain Noble. I will send the link to the WhatsApp group, and y'all, whoever is interested to join in, y'all can definitely join. It's an open group, so even you can send whatever information, questions, queries, whatever you have, and so will Greenline. It's an open platform for everyone to discuss and yes, about the topic. Is that
Okay, thank you very
I will
much.
send to you in
Yes, yes,
the
yes.
chat box. Yeah, the link.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes, please put it on the chat box. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Welcome.
I guess every questions have been answered, and we're almost at the end of the session. Yeah, please feel free to, like. Kiran, do you have something else to say, or we can
No,
finish here?
no, that this I think brings us to the end of the meeting. Mm,
I guess we can all leave the meeting now. Thank you so
Can
much
we?
for your participation.
I have shared the group link in the chat box. Please check it out.
Thank you.